Hey guys, it is Mathel here once again, today with a video guide. Today's guide will be about the low-life Incinerate build, the build that I believe is probably the strongest I've made and played in 2.0, that is the Act 4 patch, as well as one of the strongest builds I've ever played, and probably the best Incinerate build I've ever played. This is also one of the only low-life builds I've ever really made, and Incinerate seems to be the pretty much only option that I can consider as a low life worthy. Just there we took down double Dominus on an 81 Palace, I believe it is, showcasing a bit of strength of the build. So I'll just kick off with a few little highlights here, and then I'll get straight into all the passives, the gear, the setup, and just a whole bunch of discussion about the character itself. This here is a tier 15 map with vulnerability up. On top of that, I come across my arch nemesis, Hast, the pillager of crap characters, which usually are quite a lot of mine. But yeah, as you can see, through the use of things like Discipline, Vile Haste, you can tank pretty much anything in the game, and your leech is actually pretty absurd on this build. So I welcome you back to my glorious hideout on a level 93, almost no life Scion. This is now officially on standard as it just got moved, and with that I managed to put on a level 21 Incinerate, which allowed my tooltip to go up just a bit more, and we're now at 47k, just town buffed, LMP Incinerate. Now I don't always use LMP, and that is because it costs a little bit of mana and doesn't have quite as good a range for some of the harder stuff in the game. So I quite often go into faster proj, and our DPS there is 57.9k. With that I have an absolutely free skill and I can cast it as much as I want. Also gives me quite a lot of range, and it is my choice for things like Uber runs and certain particular hard boss fights. That said though, you can sometimes jump into slower proj, and I sometimes do. DPS with that one is 68.5k. That is without flasks, so you got to bear in mind that I pretty much 100% of the time will have an Atziri flask up. That's why I run two of them. And with that, it gives another 10,000 DPS, so the DPS in this build is actually pretty damn insane. Also, you get some Vile Haste in the mix, and things start to go crazy. But let's get straight into the nitty-gritty of the build. First things first, it uses a Shavs. My Shavs is currently 6-linked. You really don't need a 6-link, because for this build there's basically nothing you can do with a 6-link except for make life harder on yourself. Iron Will is the only thing I can add that doesn't really change my mana cost, thanks to the Arrow and Jewelry, at all, so it just gives me some DPS. The 6-link here, as far as Iron Will is concerned, is worth 5,000 DPS, so a little over 10%. Which still is nothing to sneeze at, so if you can have a 6-link, by all means get a 6-link. If you can't, no worries at all, the 5-link will perform perfectly for you. That said though, if you really want to get a level 4 in power, you will go up another 5,000 DPS. It's not a huge deal. A level 4 in power is something like 25 exalts, but you go up to 52k DPS here, or 53. And with that, you'll have to do something about your mana. Whether that means taking more reduced mana cost jewels, or unreserving some of your mana using some clarity, or just plain being faster proj for your entire life. If you're a faster proj with an empower in there, you end up having about a 2 mana cost skill, and it's still okay. And faster proj single beam actually still clears just fine when it one-shots everything, and at this DPS stage it does. So that's your choice. I'm fine with a Iron Will and no Empower. Very expensive, and I don't think it's worth it. So first things first, Shavs, 5-link. You can't really use a Solaris Lorica because getting the colors is damn near impossible. 5-link, you are going to need 5 off colors. That's pretty hard. And if you can't get a Shavs, you can maybe make the build work as CI with an Infernal Mantle. It's pretty hard, and it has its own complications, but this build serves to exist as a low-life build. Bear that in mind, that you should only really go into this build when you have a Shavs. As for the links that we are running, Incinerate. As always, Incinerate. You need 20 quality on it, that's 40 extra proj speed, it's very important to have. If you can get level 21, that's amazing too. Not all that necessary though. I only just put it on as soon as I come to standard. I was doing fine without it. LMP, quality on that pretty important as well. LMP is what I was using, not GMP, because it's a lower mana multiplier, and it seems to have a pretty good spread anyway. I feel like GMP is a bit of a waste. Normally I will be using faster proj for the harder stuff though. Added chaos damage, that's your 5th link. It's pretty damn important for more chaos damage, since this build largely revolves around having chaos damage so you can leech through Atziri flasks and not needing penetration. It's a pretty good gem. It gives you a solid amount of damage, almost 10,000 DPS there, but it is after spell echo and after faster casting as far as I'm concerned. You can rearrange priorities however you want. The next hero of the build is the Consuming Dark, of course. Converts 75% of your damage to chaos damage, which means almost all of our damage is chaos. As well as that, it allows you to whirl, which gives you a great defensive ability in Whirling Blades. And on top of that, you get Fortify attached to your Whirling Blades, so you get Fortify out of nowhere, which the build would otherwise not have. So Consuming Dark is actually a very solid choice. Now that damage is 75% chaos, that lets me leech 1.5% leeched as life every time one of these flasks is up, and gives us some extra damage. On top of that, we leech through Warlord's Mark. So with Valpact and Flask and Warlord's Mark up, you just basically staying at full life all the time. It's amazing. And the purpose of this whole setup and the build was to use Atziri Flask, so I didn't have to use a Life Leech gem in my main setup. So it frees you another gem socket to get more DPS. That's one of the strengths of the build. So Consuming Dark, pretty goddamn amazing, and really nice for Incinerate. On top of that, you shove your Anger in there, get +1 on Anger. Anger's a pretty big deal for this build. So as you can see, 47k DPS, take off Anger, you lose 6,000 DPS. So Anger is a huge deal for this build. Still in low life, and the way, got Anger attached to Blood Magic. It has to be a really high level to overcome the 200% multiplier range. I don't think I have an example of that, but if it's not like level 18, I think, you probably won't be able to cast Anger at this range. Attached to Blood Magic. Before that, just have Blood Magic attached to your Discipline Aura. The rest of the gear is pretty damn straightforward. The more you can spend in your helm, helm, shield, and gloves, the better your build will be. But I basically just chaosed all of those items, and here we are. Some of them turned out really amazing. Put about 200 chaos into this thing, and it's, 300 ES I would say is a good baseline for how much helm ES you want on a helm. Few resists if you can get them. Shield, I also chaos this thing, put about 20 chaos into this thing, and it just turned out amazing. I'd say baseline you want about 300 ES, but the spell power is also really important on the shield. It gives an absolute buttload of damage because you don't really get too much spell power throughout the tree or anywhere else. So as much spell power as you can get in something like a shield will increase your DPS quite substantially. Now if I can show an example. I think I can. 41k. Take off the shield. We're losing damn near 10,000 damage. Now that's pretty huge just from a shield slot, so don't underestimate how much DPS a shield slot can be. Once again, the more you can spend, the better your build will be for it. Gloves, just a whole bunch of ES, whole bunch of resists. At this point though, I am quite overcapped on resists, as you can see. All 3 resists are heavily overcapped, so just, you got so many slots to get resists, get them wherever you can, and it shouldn't be too hard. Belt, once again, bit of ES, try resist. I wanted to shove chaos somewhere in on the build, but I just didn't manage to do that, so ideally you should be able to get something like 60 chaos resist to negate the negativity. Lionized Paws, of course, cannot be stunned when on low life. That's very important. That is our stun immunity for the build. As well as that, they give you some pretty good strength and dexterity to use the gems and items on the build. So they're pretty much locked in place. You got to use them. Lastly, the heroes of the build are the Elrion jewelry. I wouldn't really recommend playing this without Elrion jewelry. You'll have to manage mana, you have to have something like clarity, some mana regen points. It's just going to be a mess, and it's terrible. With your minus 24 on Elrond Jewelry, 8, 8, and 8, we have minus 24. That gives us a 27 mana cost Incinerate. On top of that, I also have a 5% reduced mana jewel. So it takes, for every 5% you can put on, you take away roughly 1 mana cost. I only have 1, so I'm down to 2, and 2 becomes fairly sustainable. As you can see, I slowly degen, but usually whirling around and getting that back. But with LMP, you can't just plain stand there forever. Which is why sometimes fast approach comes into play, especially for lower regen maps and no regen maps. But that's the beauty of the build. With Aeon Jewelry, with fast approach, all things like that, I can do every single map mod in the game. I don't have to shy away from no regen maps. I can do blood magic maps. It's all easy. You can do every single mod. Reflect doesn't matter. Minus max doesn't matter. So that is one of the largest strengths of the build, and that's all because of Aeon Jewelry. Now rolling these can be hard, can be easy. Really depends on how far into the league we are. Usually people with minus 8s and some cast speed. There's a good 10-20 on softcore usually. Or if you want, you can just go for like minus 5s, minus 4s, and some cast speed on them. So someone will have that already orged. You can regal it, and then just put yes on it. That's the only really other important stat on there. And then you can divine the mana cost to become 8. Sometimes that might be cheaper than just getting 8s with cast speed. Of course, you don't have to get cast speed. Like a strength and an all resist there is just fine as well, because I need strength. But cast speed is basically the only thing on rings and amulet that will increase your DPS and is reliable to get. Is reliable to get. Aside from that, just the increased max energy shield from the Elrond costs 1x to put on. Bear in mind, it's pretty pricey, and it's a range of 5 to 20, so took me quite a few exots to get these rolls because I was fairly unlucky, but hopefully you are luckier than me. As for flasks, 2 Atziri flasks, 20 quality on each. They are your bread and butter. Have it up whenever you want to leech. You won't always need to leech, but if you want to leech, you have an Atziri flask up. Otherwise, you just drop a Warlord's Mark and same effect. Granite Flask with a freeze and chill immune effect on it. That prevents all freeze and chill whenever you need it. Use it situationally, not all the time. We have no other freeze or chill preventative measures, and that also means you cannot use a Taste of Hate, because a Taste of Hate, basically if you use a Taste of Hate instead of Granite, anytime you get hit by melee, you're probably going to get frozen or chilled. So basically a Granite. Still does some good reduction. Let's have a look here. 29%. It's not too bad. Gets some out of the way. On top of that, you use Enduring Cry to keep up 4 endurance charges. And you end up, if you want to maintain your endurance charges, you'll be fairly tanky. And then we got 1 Ruby Flask with a Bleed mod on it, and usually I'm using 1 Topaz Flask with a Curse mod on it. So that covers your Bleed, Curse, Freeze, the 2 elements you're going to mostly take damage from, and your leeching. Now I have 9k, yes, that's a pretty good amount at this point. If you really want to invest more into the passive tree, you can get more. There's still some more over here. You could drop down, grab that. You could get a lot more from jewel slots, because I basically don't have any from jewel slots. But 9k and the current gear I have is what I'm happy with. Obviously, if you had perfect gear, like another 200 ES on the shield, another 100 ES up here, you could probably go for 11, 12k, something like that, and it would be a very strong build indeed. Talk about any other gems. Vile Haste, Vile Discipline, as I mentioned, are your bread and butter for boss fights. Righteous Fire. Now, that's an interesting one. I have been using Righteous Fire just a bit here and there, and that is mostly for things like double vials on Uber Atziri. You can use it on Palace Dominus, Comb, Trio in Atziri. Basically, as long as you have a Atziri Flask up or some Warlord's Mark with Righteous Fire and you're attacking something, you will be able to out-leech it. Problem is, as soon as you stop attacking, you go boom, degen straight away. So use it at your own risk. And here is a quick example of us using some Righteous Fire on the Uber Atziri zone. This is against the 2 Vols. As you can see, you pop your Righteous Fire, you do degen, but as soon as you start leeching through Atziri Flask and Warlord's Mark, as well as a Ruby Flask, you can do some bit of sustaining on it. But it's pretty sketchy, so I wouldn't do it too often, or at least get very used to it before you try messing around with it too much. Aside from that, Discipline, of course, got to fit that in. Arctic Armor, that gives us some more actual mitigation. And Haste. Now, we can only just barely fit all those in with an Enlighten, 92%. That's at level 3. As well as Reduced Mana Reservation, and a Reduced Mana Reservation there. Before I had these and Enlighten, I just plain used Herald of Thunder instead of Haste, and had some reduced mana, some mana left over. If you really want to fit those in, grab Charisma, because an Enlighten is something you get much later. So if you have to grab Charisma and you want to drop Haste in, that's fine. Haste is equal to almost the same DPS as a Herald of Thunder, it's just that it's in the form of more Chaos damage instead of Lightning, and also helps your Whirling Blade speed a bit. So Haste is pretty good, but it's not completely necessary. Aside from that, Whirling Blades, faster attacks, Fortify, reduce mana. That's a free Whirling Blades. It's pretty quick and gives us Fortify. Very enjoyable indeed. Now we have a look at the passive tree. I leveled this build as Incinerate low life, didn't really matter on standard. Grab Incinerate as soon as you can, some Elrion jewelry. It's free then, you Incinerate, and you should steamroll the game. We start as a Scion, and the reason for that is to get the jewel slots as well as this jewel slot. This is a really quite efficient point here. If you don't start Scion, you can't get it, and it's 3 points for 24 proj damage, which is pure Incinerate damage, and you get another jewel slot for 1 more point. Then you get all of these, which aren't particularly wasted at all. They're very nice points when you factor in the jewel socket. Grab Harrier. Don't get these till much later. This is a lot of ES here and a good spell node. Grab this jewel and shove an energy from within. That turns all of this into pure ES, so it becomes very efficient ES-wise. You end up getting something like 25% ES from this one jewel node if you put this in. Pretty great. Cast speed there. Going down here, you grab all this ES. Sniper, pretty good proj speed. Cast speed dexterity. Grab Vial Pact whenever you have some leech in the form of Atziri Flasks, or just life leech if that's what you're leveling up as. Ballistic Mastery, that's your proj speed, your proj damage. Up here, get to Pain Attunement as soon as you can actually use low life in the form of Shavs. Ghost Reaver, very important to be able to actually turn your leech into ES. Snowforged, pretty good points just for fire damage. Arcane Vision, something you're going to need as low life. This is a whole bunch of ES. This is a whole bunch of damage. Alchemist turns basically all of your flasks into something slightly beefier. So our fire resist flask now take us up to 88, so it's 13 fire resist, max fire resist as opposed to just 10. And on top of that, the granite becomes better, and the Atziri flasks here actually become stronger too, so they end up giving you more leech, more damage. You grab that jewel socket and you grab all of this ES. As far as what you're looking for jewels, the perfect jewel is basically something like this, except with a 4th mod that's some damage or cast speed as well. Ideally, you get some ES, some proj speed, some spell power, but you can settle for something like damage, spell power, holding shield, cast speed, and reduce mana. That's not a very good one, but it's just what I've got there. I think one of my best might be this one, cast speed, proj damage. So as far as actual stats go, projectile damage is basically your priority because that affects your entire Incinerate skill. So does spell power. Because what we're talking about when affecting the entire skill is the added chaos gem as well. When you just get pure fire damage, that affects the Incinerate, which then gets converted to chaos. And so fire damage is still really good, but proj damage and spell power is going to affect your Incinerate as well as your added chaos. So it's the highest value of damage you can get. So now that I'm 93, I'm also grabbing these proj nodes. And as far as I'm concerned, that's the end of the guide. I'm pretty sure that's it. This character has been amazing for me. Low Life Incinerate is, I would say, highly recommended. If you have a Shavs to play around with, by all means go for it. I'd say the entire budget of the build if you factor in the low life. If you factor in the Shavs, a 5-link Shavs, a few X and ES items at the very least. I'm not sure what Shavs go for, but anything from like 10 to 15 exalts these days for this entire build to at least function pretty well. Not necessarily hit the same stage as I am at, though. Get yourself a tabular shield as well. Level all your shit in it. That's pretty awesome. So anyway, this has been the Low Life Incinerator. Probably one of my favorite builds in 2.0 and one of the strongest ones I've played. Hope you guys go out there, have a shot whenever you can. Pick up a Shavs. They're not that expensive these days. And have yourself some fun. I've been Mathel. Thanks for watching and see you guys next time.